So good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another episode of Is It That Bad, where we take a look at an album that maybe got mixed reviews or things happen, lineup changes, and people said or it was bad or like they didn't give it a chance. So what we do here is like we re-listen to it and we like talk about like what we thought when we listen to it. We on the second round we talk about the free tracks that we think aren't the best, and then we vote on the third round for thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs sideways. So today I'm joined again by JC Rock and Metal Reviews, who's almost like I think when I monetize, I have to give him some of my money. So JC, how are you today?
Good, thanks.
Good.
Yeah.
And for the first time on the channel, we have Nick Zeno. So Nick Zeno is another YouTuber that I discovered a few months ago. And he does a lot of like rock, alternative rock album reviews. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool because like I like alternative rock. It's not just metal for me. So I saw that he hadn't done a collaboration. I'm like, hey, I should ask him if he wants to do an like a collaboration for this video. So Nick, how are you today?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me on the show. I've been watching your channel for a while, and yeah, just been enjoying watching the channel and watching your videos. It's an honor to be here and get to talk about this album with you guys.
Yeah, it should have been an Oasis album because for people who don't know, Nick is a huge Oasis fan. I love Oasis as well. So I know we did an Oasis one a few like weeks and a half ago, but we're talking about a band that is a huge band from the 90s. It's a band that had an iconic singer. So it's Stone Temple Pilots, and this is their 2018 album, which is a self-titled record. And it has that butterfly, which I think is representing like a rebirth of the band. Stone Temple Pilots for me were a huge band. I know they got lumped in. I remember when they came out, they said that Scott Weiland was copying Eddie Vedder at a time, but I never saw it. I always thought that Scott Weiland had more of like a raspier, like David Bowie type of vibe to him, especially in the dancing and the performance, and not like what Eddie Vedder did. And it's a band that they had their troubles, and they had a change, like they had Chester Bennington for one EP, and to me that was kind of weird. But this was after they lost both singers, and they decided to do this album and dedicate it to the last singers. And a lot of people didn't know. Like I asked some people if they want to cover it. They're like, they have albums. They didn't know that they have put out this record. So I did listen to it, when it came out 2018. So yeah, so we're gonna do a deep dive and really talk about this. And the elephant in the room is the new singer, Jeff Gutt. Obviously, everyone's going to have thoughts because Scott Weiland was such an amazing frontman and singer. So for this first round, we're gonna have JC start, and what we'll do, we'll have JC, Nick, and then me. So, JC, your initial thoughts on listening to this album?
Okay, I listened to this when it came out, and my first impression was they got a new singer, and I knew that this was after Scott Weiland died, so obviously I knew it was a new person. And my first thought was that they found somebody who like sounds a lot like Scott Weiland. I read a little history on it, and I found out that they did an audition. So I'm under the impression that I think they specifically like wanted to get somebody who like sounded like Scott, and that's what they did. I don't know if that was a good idea, because looking at bands in the past, I'm thinking of like Black Sabbath. They went from like Ozzy to Dio, and then to there were like a bunch of other singers. AC/DC went from Bon Scott to Ryan Johnson, and like they were different singers. So this band wanted to find like somebody like exactly like Scott Weiland, and I think that's probably like the biggest issue with this album. Like I listened to it like when it came out, and then I kind of like forgot about it. I never like went back to it until we decided to do this video. So that's really my initial thoughts. It's like it wasn't like memorable because I listened to it maybe a few times back then, but I don't know. I guess I have some more opinions on it in the later rounds, but yeah.
Yeah, good first impressions, man. So what about you, Nick?
Yeah, I remember when this album came out back in 2018, and like JC was saying, with Jeff Gutt being the singer of the band, the new singer of the band, he sounds so similar to Scott Weiland. It's so uncanny, and obviously the band was going for that. I think with Chester, he didn't have the same sound as Scott Weiland. He's obviously so unique himself when he was a singer. So he brought his own appeal to the band, but then when they got Jeff Gutt in, it was such an obvious response to having somebody who sounds like Scott. And with my first impression with listening to the album again before we were doing this video is that it sounds like STP, but it just doesn't seem to have the same heart and soul that STP had on those first 4 or 5 records. And I was thinking actually back to the other self-titled STP album that came out in 2010, which was the last one with Scott on lead vocals, which is a much better record than this one. And like
that has Between the Lines, right?
Between the Lines was on that one. Cinnamon was a good song. And Scott Weiland, he wasn't just a great singer, but he wrote really great melodies that went really well with the riffs and the power that the band was doing on instruments. So Jeff Gutt doesn't seem to have that same kind of almost like a Beatlesy kind of sense of melody that Scott Weiland has. So that was something that I was thinking was lacking on the record. But I think the rest, he's a great singer, and the rest of the band sounds really good. There is a lot of really great like guitar riffs and bass and drums happening on here. So the band sounds great. It just doesn't feel like quite like STP should feel, in my opinion.
Yeah, those are great initial thoughts. So I did listen to this when it came out in 2018, but just like JC, I listened to it the first week, and then it went in my I've totally forgot about it file. And then they put out an album in 2020, and that was one that I even cared less about. And yeah, Jeff Gutt, he's got a good voice, but it almost feels to me when I'm listening to this like it's a Stone Temple Pilots tribute band. Like it feels like it's a band that you would see in a bar. Don't get me wrong, Robert, the Leo brothers sound is still right, it's still there. But there's a few songs that when we'll talk about the second round, I have some complaints that I will mention. But yeah, like I think lyrically also, like even though Scott Weiland was a great singer, but he wrote like he had feeling. And even though like Jeff Gutt can sing, and I was reading some background on him, he was on some like singing contest, like American something.
Yeah, I think it was X Factor. Yeah,
X Factor, something like that. And he when you look at his picture, he kind of even like try to imitate even the hairstyle of Scott Weiland. I think it was like too much, because the elephant in the room here is like there's bands that can change singer and be successful. Like to me, the prime example of that is a band like Van Halen. You know, they had David Lee Roth, who left, and he was like a super showman. But then they brought Sammy Hagar, and he didn't try to imitate Roth. He did his own thing. And I think that's why it worked. On this case, I don't, they look at it, when Jeff Gutt joined the band, they have only released 2 albums, and when they tour now, and I see tours, they're never the headlining act. Like they're opening for Bush, they're opening for Live, but they're never headlining. And I think it's a reason for that. So I don't think he's a bad singer, but yeah, like I think we're all in, like there's something lacking. So those were my first impressions. I think when I listened to it in 2018, maybe I was just excited for new Stone Temple Pilots, but now 6 years later, I'm listening to it like more objectively. I think that it's less of a fanboy. So those are my initial thoughts on this one. So let's go to round 2, where we name 4 or 3 tracks that we think are not as great. So JC, what tracks did you pick?
Okay. Well, let me first say, in general, I don't think like there's anything here that I think is awful or that I hate or that's really bad. For me, a lot of the songs were kind of either generic or boring. So those are going to be my picks. I guess my first one would be the opening track, Middle of Nowhere. It kind of goes back to their older stuff. It's a little bluesy, but it was just too straightforward for me. Like you were saying before, like it sounds like a tribute band. I think like this song didn't really have anything special about it. It was just, you know, they were just kind of going for that sound, but it didn't really do much for me. So that's my first pick. And then my second pick is going to be the song right after it called Guilty. Another one there, going for that classic Stone Temple Pilots sound, but the song was just not memorable. There wasn't really anything I liked about it. It sounded pretty generic. And it was just like, all right, we're gonna try to sound like a classic Stone Temple Pilots song. You know, we're gonna show you all we have this new vocalist. He sounds like Scott. And I think that song didn't really do it for me. And I'll pick another one. I'm gonna say I'll say like Roll Me Under. That was like one of the ones in the middle. That was one where they tried to go heavy, but I think it was like the sound wasn't there. I like, you know, I think I had some issue with like the drumming. I think like I liked the drumming on it, but I didn't like the sound of it. I think like there was like lacking the snare drum. That's what I wrote in my notes on that song. So I think also production wise, this album had some issues like you know, like so many instruments I couldn't hear very clearly. Like, you know, sometimes it sounded like muddy at times. Now let me also say like the drummer, they have the original drummer. His name is Eric Kretz. That guy's really good. I mean, he's a really good drummer. He has some like interesting like different like you know, techniques he used. And but that's it. I think the problem with the songs I picked is that they were just kind of like generic and forgettable, but not like terrible songs. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
those are my three.
we've covered some terrible stuff here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally understand your point. So what about you, Nick?
Well, I like the first, you know, few songs on the record. I know you were saying, JC, that Middle of Nowhere wasn't like one of your favorites. I didn't mind that one, but you're right. It is very much like going straight for that STP kind of sound right off the bat.
Yeah.
Some of the tracks that I didn't like as much were kind of on the second half of the record. 6-8, maybe that was kind of like in the first half or in the middle. That sounded really generic. A lot of the melodies on this album just didn't really stick with me. When you think back to a lot of the STP hits, like you're thinking Vaseline, you're thinking Lady Picture Show, and all these, you know, huge hits, Plush, all these gigantic radio hits that you know off by heart. And there's not a lot of songs on this record that you come away saying, oh yeah, I can remember that, and I'm gonna like sing that in the car on the way home. So that one didn't really do anything for me. Then Never Enough sounded almost like, you know, we're talking about how they sound almost like an STP tribute band. This sounded like a blues bar cover band, you know, that you'd see like, you know, somewhere in Toronto up here in Canada, you'd see them, you know, playing in the bar down the street, and you'd be like, who are these guys? And so that sounded kind of almost like generic and pedestrian for STP, because they're known for doing these iconic songs. And then the other one that I didn't really like was called Finest Hour. And that again just felt like an STP cover band. And like the band themselves, I think, like we're saying, like the instruments, like the band themselves, the DeLeo brothers and Eric Kretz on drums, they all sound great, but just not having the same soul that a lot of the great STP songs have. So the first half for me was okay, but then the second half, it didn't really do much for me. I lost my interest big time.
Yeah, good point. So so that leads me for round two. And I actually, the starting song, Middle of Nowhere, I don't have it as my pick, but something that's very interesting in that song is that it sounds to me like Soccer Train Blues by Velvet Revolver. That riff, I thought I was gonna hear like, and I want to. I'm like, this sounds like that Velvet Revolver song almost to a T, but less good. And so yeah, but I enjoyed it, but I was like listening to it like I've heard this before. But yeah, I think I'm like with Nick. I think the second half of the album, to me, they hit the snooze button for me. But I have some different tracks. I know there's one that was a single. I don't know if it was like a single that people liked, but it's The Art of Letting Go. I don't know. I just found this song like this could have been an Air Supply song. And it's like the type of soundtrack that you listen to when you're waiting at the dentist or like at a doctor's office. I don't know. I just found it like the melodies. It's like Hall and Oates. Like I felt like I was gonna hear like sailing or something like that. It's just too clean because Stone Temple Pilots they were commercial, but they had like an attitude to them. You know, like Weiland had like a swagger and sex type thing. Come on, when I remember listening to that track when I was in high school and thinking this is dirty. I I shouldn't listen to this. I was in a Catholic school, so so yeah, that song it's just I wouldn't say it's like atrocious bad because it's played. They're not playing bad. I just find it very boring and not very like rock like. I also pick Finest Hour because again very slow and it's like they're just saying the same thing all over again. It's like finest hour and then they repeat the same thing and it's like yeah, these lyrics are kind of like what the kids today call basic. It's basic songwriting. So yeah, that one I didn't like. And I thought that the song Thought She'd Be Mine was also very boring and it repeats the same like I thought she'd be mine in the morning. It sounds like a karaoke version of a bad Scott Weiland impression. So those are my three picks. So we all pick almost different songs except Finest Hour. So now we're gonna go to the third and final round where we're gonna give our final thoughts and maybe say what we did enjoy about the album and we will vote thumbs up, thumbs down, or sideways. Like we're like, yeah, it's not that bad, or and we'll do that. So JC, your final thoughts on this one?
All right, I think I'm going to go with the thumbs like sideways for this one. Now, these are my reasons because there were some songs I liked, but I didn't love them. And then the songs that I didn't like, but I didn't hate them. So it's the kind of album that I listened to it a few times to prepare for this. I probably won't listen to it again for a while unless I maybe doing something on my channel if I'm like going to do a ranking video of Stone Temple Pilots or for some other reason, like I'm listening to it for a video that I'm going to make. But otherwise, I don't think I'm definitely going to like go for this album to listen to it again. But with that being said, I think there were some songs I liked. The single Meadow, I think that was the one song that was familiar to me when I re-listened to it. I think that was the one that I remembered. And I like it. I thought it's like a more of a laid back, it's a catchy song. I liked some of the slower songs. I like actually like The Art of Letting Go. I thought it was pretty cool. It just had some I like the lyrics. They were they were well written. Had some jazzy elements in that one. Then the other one, another one that Hector picked, Thought She'd Be Mine. That was another one that I kind of liked, but it reminded me of like Lady Picture Show. It had like that kind of vibe. So I thought that one was okay. But then there were a few others that I don't have much of an opinion, like Just a Little Lie, 6-8. They were like okay. I think there was another one that I kind of liked. Good Shoes, like towards the end, that was like one of the harder ones. That was like okay, but for me, it's like I'm not gonna go back to it, but I don't hate it. Like I don't think it's awful. If I ranked Stone Temple Pilots, I'm sure this would either be last or second to last. I don't know. I haven't listened to Perdita in a long time. But
yeah, that one's more like very acoustic, I believe.
It's like an unplugged album, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah,
remember it
well, that's my
either.
final thoughts. Yeah, thumbs sideways for me.
So sideways. So
Yeah.
yeah, nice. What about you, Nick? What are your final thoughts and rating?
I'm gonna go thumb sideways as well, because this is kind of a mixed bag, and like it doesn't really live up to the past SDP catalog. And when you're gonna grab for an SDP album, like you're saying, JC, this is gonna be the last one that you grab, because there's so many much better albums in the SDP catalog. And when you have, it's almost like listening to Greta Van Fleet and listening to Led Zeppelin. It's like, I'm just gonna go listen to Led Zeppelin instead, right? If you had
That's what I've been saying in my videos, and people, they're like, but they do not sound like Led Zeppelin. I'm like, clean your ears. They do.
I know my Greta Van Fleet review videos have been the most controversial on my channel, but that could be another video. But yeah, it's just not a bad album by any stretch. You can obviously tell the band put a lot of effort and they tried to do their best to write a good album. It just doesn't live up to their past stuff. And I don't blame them for trying to continue on as STP after Scott Weiland and Chester Bennington died, because that's the brand name that everybody knows, and that's going to be the band that everybody pays to go see when they go play live. But it's so hard to recapture the magic, when with some of those other bands, like when you think about Van Halen, it's like, like Eddie Van Halen was kind of the creative force of that band, like David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar, maybe Sammy Hagar eventually more, but they didn't like drive the songwriting. Whereas with SDP, I feel like Scott Weiland really drove a lot of that songwriting, but I could be wrong, but he's missed. So definitely a thumb sideways for me. It's like, it's good, but it could be better. And there's better SDP albums to listen to.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember, do you remember Army of Anyone? The band that the DeLeo brothers did with Richard Patrick from Filter.
Yes.
I like that better, because he wasn't trying to sound like Scott Weiland. So when I remember that album, I'm like, yeah, that was a band that I enjoyed more of that album, because there was a time that a lot of these like super groups or like groups were forming, because I think even Dave Navarro had one called the Panic Channel, like a lot of like super groups forming here and there. And I remember they did that one. I think they did one album and nothing happened with that. But yeah, this album I'm also gonna vote sideways, because it's not great, but it's also, I can't say here like this is total crap, because it's not. It's just like very middle of the road songs. I think the only song that I could really say it's more catchy and I remember was Meadow. And I still think it sounds a lot like some it's like a mixture of Tripping a Hole in a Paper Heart meets I'm trying to remember what other song, but it's got like that type of vibe, maybe with something from the 2010, like Between the Lines. So if you take Between the Lines and Tripping a Hole in a Paper Heart and mix them, and you get Meadow. So that to me was the catchiest song on the record. To me, the flow of the album is kind of like disjointed a little bit. It like at the end they put too many like ballads at the end that like kind of like bored me a little bit, but nothing really offensive. So yeah, there you have it, guys. People, like we have actually the album is saved. It doesn't go in the trash can. So if you haven't, but like we all said, like if I have to listen to Stone Temple Pilots, I listen to the first to the first albums, especially like
I think like the first three. But the first
actually,
three would be
the number four
are great, and
number four is really underrated album, in my opinion.
And Shangri-La does pretty good too, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think I think all the albums that have Scott Weiland are pretty good. I actually didn't like the EP that they have with Chester, because I don't think Chester meshed well with their sound. But I think that's, they tried to get someone like Scott Weiland for this, but sadly, it's so sad that Scott Weiland died, because I would have loved more music with them. But the same thing happened with Scott Weiland. He went and did Velvet Revolver. The first album was good. The second one sucked. So yeah, it happened. It's something that it's sad, but it did happen. So We want to know from you couchers, what do you think of Stone Temple Pilots 2018 album? Did you even know this album existed? Because I don't think a lot of people know about this album. If you listen to it, comment below what are your favorite tracks, or what tracks are the ones that you didn't like, and what would you rate it? Let us know. And please subscribe to my guest channel. You have JC Rock and Metal Reviews. He does, metal rankings, reviews, history, and all of that things. And he's almost at the you're getting up there in the 2000, almost 3,000 subscribers, man, right?
I think I need a little, about like 400, something like that.
This
Yeah.
year,
To
man.
hit 3,000. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I want to thank Nick for joining the channel. Nick has a really cool channel. He talks more about like alternative rock. He did 3 album reviews this weekend. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of album reviews on a weekend, and they're pretty, interesting. And also he plays music, so he plays some songs on his channel. So it's a pretty cool channel. So subscribe to him as well. And hopefully, Nick, hopefully you'll return to the channel to do another video.
Yeah, I would love that. And we'll have you over on my channel too. We should do something together soon. That'd be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, no, I like to collaborate on other channels as well. So, and people, if you haven't subscribed to me, please do so. I think that for the next Is It That Bad, we're JC, you sent me an email of no, it was the Green Man about some who's the artist? I think he played in Five Finger Death Punch, right?
Jeremy Spencer, and it's Psycho Sinner, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to prepare mentally to listen to that one. So that will probably be the next Is It That Bad? And we'll have a few, there's a few new albums that are coming out that I said, like Alien Ant Farm has a new album. So I think I'm going to do for this episode. And also no, not Taproot. What's the name of the Trapped? The band who had Headstrong has a newer song, a newer album coming out, and I'm like, yeah, I'll probably we'll do new albums this year, because we did some new albums last year and people enjoyed it that we did the last Gutt Stab record, and that fared well. So yeah, so probably those will be the next Is It That Bad? And in May, we're gonna do also the new 6 Feet Under. And for that one, we're gonna have a YouTuber that always comments on the videos, Robert. He's going to guest with us on that one. So keep an eye out for that. So again, people, we'll see you next time on another episode of Is It That Bad? So this is Hector, the Shield Dude from the couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.